This authorizes a juvenile court to transfer a child who is 16 years of age or older to an adult criminal court for committing the offense of escape from a youth detention center.
So they'd be sent to adult court because they escaped, which could send them to an adult prison?
What crime is being committed? What level of crime is being committed for someone escaping from a youth development center?
They've already committed felonies.
I just want everybody to be clear. This isn't saying that juveniles who have charged the offense of robbery or attempt to commit robbery and escape from a facility are going to be tried as adults. This says or they may not have committed any egregious or violent offense.
Well, in reading your bill, you said the words transfer a child. Is there a reason that they chose to use the word child?
I assume that's because they are 16 years of age and not an adult.
So they're children. That's why they use the word child in your bill.
They are children that have committed crimes.
Yes, ma'am. They committed the crime of robbery, or they committed the crime of attempted escape. Is that attempted escape? What's the code for attempted escape for juveniles that they broke?
Section 375206.
In all this conversation, I'm reminded of a recent expose and white paper on the sexual assault, abuse, physical assault of young people, juveniles at the Wilder Center. And I can't imagine what that would be like to be there and suffer that from staff or staff allowing it from other students. And I think I'd do everything in my power to get away from that type of assault and abuse and get myself somewhere safe.
What reasons are people typically escaping from youth detention centers? Why would someone want to escape?
It alleges the staff physically assaulted youth and incentivized youth to assault each other by providing bounties of ramen noodles and other snacks. It also said residents were subjected to sexual abuse, as well as arbitrary use of isolation.
Not much has been done to fix what has happened, and it's still going on.
The Wilder facility, you have to be they're three-time felons before they go there.
To help young people who might be considering escape or anything like that, is this bill provide any additional resources to the youth who the state is incarcerating?
I've been around to several of these detention centers, and yes, they have all kinds of classes for them and rehabilitation.
The report also alleges that residents didn't receive adequate medical or mental health care and instead are prescribed psychotropic medications without appropriate monitoring. The report also says that the children were not provided adequate schooling, including special education, and fails to provide evidence-based therapies and programs. It also says children were denied their care programming like sports and art, as well as contact with family and religious services and grievance processes. If you were subjected to all of that, wouldn't you try to escape also?
But this bill isn't adding resources to the youth detention centers in our state. Is that right?
They are already getting those. What would they add?
Because according to your bill, people are still seeking escape, and so I'm wondering if there was more psychiatric help, if there was more social services support, if there was more resources for rehabilitation, if there were more things that the state were offering to these young people to actually help them to be rehabilitated instead of criminalizing them even more for not committing another crime, whether or not that would make a difference. But the problem with this legislation and the pattern that it continues is the criminalization of juveniles and youth as what someone calls sort of super predators. These are children already in extraordinarily difficult circumstances who have committed no additional crime, who you are now saying need to be sent to adult prison. And we know what the image of those children typically is. They oftentimes look like me. And I am worried that we are passing legislation that continues to penalize and criminalize someone who has committed no additional crime just because this body has the power to do so. That is not how we should be using our legislative power. And the reason that I was asking about the resources that are going into youth detention centers is because if we want for them to be places of rehabilitation, if we want for them to be places where we prevent young people from having recidivism problems, then we have to look much more holistically as how these young people got there in the first place. And doing everything in our power to prevent them from being there. And if they are there, doing everything within our power to help them be rehabilitated and members of our society. Not criminalizing them further because they escaped.
There's always a sense of deterrence in these type of punishments. But you cannot try a child in criminal adult court simply for seeking safety or running away for any number of reasons, regardless of why they were put in that youth development center. Let's hit the pause button here and think about what we're doing to these children and threatening to these children who are 16 and 17 years of age.
So I understand the child, the juvenile, would be transferred to an adult facility, no matter what the crime was that they were originally detained for, if they attempted or actually escaped from that detention facility. And with the facility that would be the new home, so to speak, would that have to meet certain standards? And I ask that because we had testimony before the House Criminal Justice Committee from individuals who, as juveniles, were transferred to an adult facility that was not qualified to hold them, was not qualified to administer the programs, was not qualified to hold them in a population other than as solitary confinement. Those facilities would be inspected by the juvenile court system, DCS, DHS. How do we make sure that our children are safe in those adult facilities?
That's already in place.
Whose job is it to ensure that children don't escape from a juvenile facility? Does somebody have a responsibility for that?
You would think that the juvenile would, to be try and better themselves to get out and be a productive person.
If we're going to take 16-year-old children that are charged with robbery or charged with trying to escape those conditions of our state facilities, the facilities that we fund, doesn't this make having a juvenile facility mute? Why don't we just send them all to adult prison?
I just really think that this is a terrible idea. It's a bad bill, and there's other ways to address some of these issues.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's think through this. The goal here is justice and rehabilitation.
And Chair Lady, I'm not, it's just a bad bill, honestly. I support, in fact, I think I voted for probably almost 100% of your bills. This is just one that's just not it. This is a bad bill. We're talking about taking a child.
But a lot of these juveniles that escape, you know what they do. They go rob again. A lot of them kill. A lot of them steal. So this,
Chair Littleton.
so it, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.